The fluorescent lights in St. Mary's Hospital Room 347 hummed with the kind of persistence that made everything feel temporary. 3 days after a drunk driver had T-boned my Honda Civic at a red light, I still couldn't turn my head without feeling like someone was driving nails into my skull. The morphine drip kept the worst of it at bay. 3 broken ribs, a concussion, 27 stitches forming a railroad track across my forehead. But nothing could dull what came next. "Pay rent or get out." My father's voice cut through the chemical haze. Dennis Sullivan stood at the foot of my hospital bed, arms crossed over his construction worker chest, face red in that way that used to terrify me as a kid. Still did, if I'm being honest. "Dad, I'm in the hospital." My tongue felt thick. The words came out slurred, pathetic. "It's the 3rd, Moira. Rent was due on the 1st. I was unconscious on the 1st, fighting for my life on the 2nd. I tried to sit up straighter, but my ribs screamed in protest. The doctor said, I don't care what the doctor said. You live under my roof, you pay rent. $800. You know the rules." Behind him, Patty Morrison, his wife of 3 years, my stepmother in name only, clutched her knockoff Louis Vuitton purse and made that sound. That nervous, tittering laugh like a chihuahua having an anxiety attack. She'd been making that sound since she moved in, a soundtrack to every uncomfortable moment, every cruelty, every time Dennis raised his voice or his hand. "Dennis, maybe we should," she started, but he cut her off with a look. My brother Declan leaned against the doorframe, scrolling through his phone. 26 years old and still living in his childhood bedroom, still letting our father pay for everything while owing me $5,000 from when his sure thing investment went belly up. He'd promised monthly payments. That was 14 months ago. He didn't look up now. "I don't have it," I said. "My account is frozen because the other driver's insurance is disputing the claim. They're saying I was partially at fault, which is complete excuses." Dennis took a step closer. "You've always got excuses, Moira. Ever since your mother died, you've been nothing but problems." The mention of my mother, Kathleen Sullivan, dead at 39 from a sudden heart attack when I was 14, made something cold settle in my chest. He said her name like an accusation, like her death was somehow my fault, too. "I'm not making excuses. I'm explaining, you think you're too good for this family?" His voice rose. A nurse passing in the hallway glanced in, saw his stance, and kept walking. That was the thing about Dennis Sullivan. People looked away. "You think because you got some fancy marketing job, some college degree I didn't pay for, you're better than us?" I never said. The slap came so fast I didn't see his hand move. 1 second I was trying to explain. The next my head snapped to the side, fresh blood blooming in my mouth where my teeth cut the inside of my cheek. The IV in my arm ripped out as I fell sideways, the monitors erupting in a cacophony of beeps and alarms. I hit the floor hard. Something in my chest cracked, a rib that was already broken breaking further, or maybe just my spirit. Blood dripped from my mouth onto the white linoleum. The fluorescent lights above swam in and out of focus. Patty's nervous laugh filled the room. Declan finally looked up from his phone, smirked, and went back to scrolling. 3 days, Dennis said, standing over me. "Pay up or get out." The door opened. Rosemary Fletcher from next door, 68 years old with kind eyes and flour usually dusting her cardigan, stood there holding yellow roses. She'd remembered they were my mother's favorite. Her face went pale as she took in the scene. Me on the floor, blood in my mouth, my father's stance, the silence that wasn't really silence at all. "I'll just..." She started to move toward me, but Dennis stepped between us. "This is family business, Mrs. Fletcher." She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw her understand. Then she set the roses on the side table and left, but not before her eyes met mine with a message I couldn't quite read yet. Later, I'd realize it was recognition. She'd seen this before, in her own life maybe, or someone else's. She knew what family business really meant. 3 days later, I was discharged with a bottle of Percocet and instructions to take it easy. Declan picked me up, which was generous of him until he held out his hand for gas money during the entire 15-minute drive. I gave him $5 because I needed the other $5 for the bus to physical therapy the next day. The house felt different when I walked in. Colder, quieter. Sienna Hayes, 22, fresh out of beauty school, Dennis's latest girlfriend, had fully moved in while I was gone. Her yoga mat took up half the living room. Her protein shakes crowded my section of the fridge. Her flat iron sat on my bathroom counter, next to a handwritten sign that said Sienna's Glam Room, with a little heart dotting the I. In the kitchen, Patty was surrounded by papers. She covered them quickly with a magazine when she saw me, but not before I caught a glimpse of what looked like credit card applications. And was that my social security number? "How are you feeling, sweetie?" The nervous laugh punctuated her question. Like I'd been hit by a truck and then by my father, I thought. "Fine," I said. I made it to my bedroom and found the padlock. Not on my door, that would have been too obvious, too actionable, but on my closet. All my work clothes, my laptop, my important documents locked away. A sticky note on the lock. See Dennis for key, rent first. I sat on my bed, now decorated with Sienna's leopard print throw pillows for some inexplicable reason, and tried to think. My phone buzzed. Another email from my boss, Marcus Wright. The subject line, "Final warning." I'd missed 3 days of work. Apparently that exceeded their compassion limit for employees who got hit by drunk drivers. I needed my laptop to work from home, but my laptop was locked in my closet. In my room. That I paid $800 a month to rent. In the house my mother had half-owned before she died. The next morning I left for physical therapy at 7. When I came back at 9, the locks had been changed. I stood on the porch where I'd learned to ride a bike, where my mother had taught me to tie my shoes, where I'd sat crying the night she died. And my key didn't work. I jiggled it, tried again. Nothing. Sienna opened the door eventually, wearing my silk robe, the one my grandmother had given me for my college graduation. "Oh," she popped her gum, always with the gum, and blinked her extensions at me. "Dennis said you don't live here anymore." She tried to close the door. I wedged my foot in, pain shooting up my injured side, but I didn't care. That's when I saw them in the living room. Dennis, Patty, Declan, and a man I recognized as Carl Brennan, my father's golf buddy, owner of Brennan's used cars, always looking for an angle. They had papers spread across the coffee table. "For a room this size with a private bathroom," Carl was saying, "you could get $1,200 easy." "800's too cheap, Dennis. You're leaving money on the table." They were assessing my room, discussing how much they could charge a real tenant, someone who would appreciate the opportunity. I stood in the doorway, still in my physical therapy clothes, still smelling like hospital antiseptic and heartbreak, and watched my family plan my replacement. Declan noticed me first. He actually laughed, like it was funny, like his sister being made homeless with fresh stitches and broken ribs was comedy gold. Patty jumped up, started her nervous routine, but Dennis just looked at me with this expression of cold satisfaction. "You had 3 days," he said. "It's been 3 days. My stuff is inside. I need my work laptop, my clothes, my documents. You can have them when you pay the back rent, plus a security deposit for the new rental agreement." He picked up a paper from the table. $1,200 a month now. Market rate according to Carl. I tried to argue. Tried to explain that you can't just lock someone out without notice, that there are laws, that this was illegal. But Dennis knew I didn't have money for a lawyer. Knew I was barely holding on to my job. Knew, somehow, that I was too proud to ask for help. That's when Rosemary appeared at her garden gate, watering can in hand, pretending not to watch. When Dennis went inside to get the new rental agreement, she hurried over and pressed something into my hand. $300 in cash and a key. "Garden shed," she whispered. "You can stay there tonight." But Dennis came back out before she could say more, and she had to pretend she was just asking about my recovery. He threatened her then, right there in broad daylight, in front of neighbors. If she interfered, He'd report her son's food truck to the health department. Makeup violations. Rosemary's son's food truck was her pride, the culmination of her American dream after immigrating from Ireland 40 years ago. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and went back to her garden. I signed the rental agreement with shaking hands, not because I intended to pay, but because I needed my things. Dennis said I could come back tomorrow with the money and collect my belongings. All of them, he promised, though Declan was already wearing my college sweatshirt and Patty had my laptop bag over her shoulder. That night, surrounded by potting soil and garden tools in Rosemary's shed, I made calls. Bank first. "I'm calling about my account," I said. "One moment." A pause. Keys clicking. "I see you have 6 credit cards with us, Miss Sullivan. Would you like to discuss 6? I only have 1 card with you." Another pause. "I show cards opened in January, March, April, June, August, and September of this year." My hands started shaking. "I didn't open those. They're all at the same billing address, 2247 Maple Street." My father's address. My address. The address I'd just been evicted from. I called the second credit card company. $3,000 in debt I'd never incurred. The third company, $7,000. By the time I'd worked through all of them, the total was $15,000. 6 cards, all opened in the last 8 months, all with my social security number, all with bills going to Dennis's address, hidden from me, paid minimum balances to keep them active, maxed out on what looked like essential oils inventory and business expenses. Patty, sweet, nervous, chihuahua-laughing Patty had stolen $15,000 worth of my financial future while serving me breakfast every morning. I sat in that garden shed, surrounded by the smell of fertilizer and earth, and realized I'd been sleeping in enemy territory for years. The credit card applications I'd seen her covering up, those had my name on them. The anxiety, the nervous laughter, that wasn't fear of Dennis. That was guilt. And Dennis had known. Had to have known. I called one more number, a number I hadn't dialed in 15 years. "Hello?" Aunt Bridget's voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. "Aunt Bridget? It's Moira." Silence. Then, "I've been waiting for this call for 15 years. A week later, I was officially homeless, but not hopeless. Harper Wilson, my friend from college, now working night shifts as an ER nurse, let me crash on her couch. We left each other notes on the coffee maker like ships passing in the night. Then Sienna posted on Instagram, a selfie of her and Dennis at the Riverside Casino, Patty and Declan in the background at the slot machines. "Family Fun Day." The caption made me want to throw my phone, but it was what she was wearing that made me move. My mother's pearl necklace, the one that had supposedly gone missing after her funeral. I knew that window, the one in my old room, loose since I was 16 and snuck out to a school dance Dennis had forbidden me from attending. I'd never gotten around to fixing it because it was mine, my secret, my escape route. At 2 p.m., while they were gambling away money they'd stolen from me, I popped that window open with a butter knife and climbed through, ribs screaming. My room looked like it had been ransacked. They'd taken what they wanted, left the rest scattered. The good laptop, gone. But they'd missed the old one I kept hidden under a loose floorboard, the one with the cracked screen I'd been using for my side project. Sullivan Financial Recovery. 2 years of careful planning, 3 pre-sold contracts, my escape plan that was supposed to launch in 6 months. Not now, not like this. But it was what I found in Dennis's office that changed everything. The safe was behind the same terrible painting of a lighthouse he'd had since I was a kid. The combination was still Mom's birthday, 07/23/86, because even in his cruelty, Dennis was predictable. Inside, I found documentation of his greatest betrayal, my mother's life insurance policy, $1.5 million, paid out when she died of a sudden heart attack at 39. I was 14. Declan was 11. The policy clearly stated that the money was to be held in trust for her children, accessible when we turned 18 for education and living expenses. I'd gotten nothing at 18, taken out student loans while Dennis bought a new truck. Declan had gotten nothing at 18, Worked minimum wage while Dennis bought a boat. Bank statements showed regular transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Medicare fraud, still claiming mom as a dependent 15 years after her death. Tax documents where he'd claimed Declan and me as dependents, even after we'd moved out and filed our own taxes. But the worst part, the part that made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped the papers, was the letter from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, dated a week before my mother died. A warning about dangerous interactions between mom's heart medication and certain supplements could cause fatal arrhythmias. The supplement bottle was there too, prescribed by a doctor I'd never heard of, filled by a pharmacy 2 towns over. The prescription date, 2 days after the warning letter, 2 weeks before the first court date for mom's divorce filing. I took photos of everything with trembling hands, the insurance documents, the bank statements, the warning letter, the supplement bottle. Then I heard the front door. They were back early. Sienna whining about losing $50. Dennis in a mood. I put everything back except for a USB drive labeled Backup 2019. Slipped it in my pocket. Closed the safe. Painting back on the wall. The window wouldn't close properly from inside. I had to leave it. Grabbed my old laptop and what clothes they'd left behind and made it out the back door just as Dennis's footsteps hit the stairs. That evening at Harper's tiny kitchen table, I plugged in the USB drive. Tax evasion going back 15 years. Fraudulent disability claims with video evidence of him golfing, lifting weights, helping Carl move a piano. Screenshots of emails discussing how to hide assets from the IRS. Correspondence with a lawyer about accessing trust funds meant for children if you had power of attorney. And most damning, evidence that my mother hadn't just been planning to leave him. She'd been documenting everything. His affairs, his gambling, his rage. She'd been building a case, and then she died. I sat there in the dark, the only light coming from the laptop screen, and understood that my father wasn't just a thief, he might be a murderer. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Declan, I need to talk to you. I have recordings. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." I stared at Declan's text for a full minute before my hands stopped shaking enough to type a response. "Where are you?" "Parking lot outside Harper's building. Been here an hour. Didn't know if you'd answer." I looked out the window. His beat-up Civic was parked under a streetlight, and I could see him in the driver's seat, hunched over his phone. My little brother, 26 years old and still afraid of our father. "Come up, apartment 3B. Harper was at work, another 12-hour shift in the ER, so it was just me when I opened the door. Declan looked worse than I'd ever seen him. A healing bruise yellowed his left cheekbone. His nose sat crooked, broken recently and badly set. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. Probably both. "Nice place," he said, which was a lie. Harper's apartment was barely 400 square feet. "What happened to your face?" "What do you think?" He touched his nose gingerly. "I owe some people money. People who don't care that Dad's accounts are frozen." I let him in. Made coffee because I didn't know what else to do. We sat at the tiny kitchen table, the same table where I'd discovered our father's crimes just hours earlier, and the silence stretched between us like all the years we'd spent on opposite sides of Dennis's manipulation. "I have recordings," he finally said, "from the past year, maybe longer." "Recordings of what?" "Everything." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Dad coaching me on how to lie to the disability doctors, discussions about hiding Mom's trust money, him and Patty planning the credit card fraud, him and Carl talking about tax schemes. He paused. Him admitting he gave Mom those supplements, the ones that killed her. The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "What?" "I was 11, Moira. I didn't understand what I was hearing. I was sitting at the top of the stairs one night, couple weeks after the funeral, and I heard him on the phone with someone, laughing about how the doctor had warned Mom about interactions, but she'd taken them anyway. Except..." He met my eyes. "She didn't take them. He gave them to her, mixed them in her morning smoothie." I heard him say it. Jesus Christ, Declan. I didn't know what it meant. Not until years later. And by then I was... He gestured vaguely at himself. I was too deep in his shit. Too scared. Too complicit. He had me forge signatures on tax documents when I was 17. Had me lie to investigators when the IRS came sniffing around his disability claim. I'm not innocent in this, Moira. I'm not some victim. You were a kid. You are his victim. I'm 26. I've been an adult for 8 years, and I kept helping him. Kept taking his money. Kept looking the other way while he destroyed you. His voice cracked. I watched him hit you in that hospital room, and I laughed. What kind of person does that? I wanted to hate him. Should have hated him. But sitting there, seeing him broken and bruised and finally on my side, I felt something else. Something like hope. The kind of person our father made you into, I said quietly. But you're here now. That matters. He pulled a small recording device from his jacket pocket. Old school, the kind journalists use. Everything's on here, and backed up in 3 places because I'm not stupid. You can have it. Use it. Send him to prison. I'll testify. I'll do whatever you need. Why now? Why not years ago? Because 15 months ago I stopped being useful to him. My credit was shot. My connections dried up. The loan shark started circling. And I saw him look at me the same way he looks at you, like I was just another thing to exploit until there was nothing left. He touched his broken nose again. These guys who beat me up? They came to the house first. Dad told them he didn't have a son. Closed the door in their faces while I was standing right there. I took the recording device, felt its weight in my palm. This won't be easy. He'll turn on you. Patty will turn on you. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything that mattered. The only thing left is my sister, and I've been losing her for 15 years. He stood up. I'm staying with Aunt Bridget for now. She drove down from Boston when I called her. She's the one who told me to come clean, to help you, to finally be the brother I should have been. Bridget's here? In town? At the Hilton downtown. She wants to see you. She has boxes of stuff, documents Mom saved, letters, photos. She's been keeping them safe, waiting. I met Bridget O'Connor the next morning at a diner on the edge of town, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee strong enough to strip paint. She looked older than I remembered, grayer, but her eyes were the same sharp blue as my mother's. She stood when she saw me, and I found myself pulled into a hug that smelled like lavender and old books. You look just like her, she said, pulling back to study my face. Kathleen would be so proud of you. I'm homeless and broke and just got fired from my job. You're fighting. That's what she'd be proud of. She had 3 boxes with her. File folders, photographs, legal documents. A diary I didn't know my mother had kept. Letters she'd written to Bridget in the months before she died. Your mother knew something was wrong, Bridget said, sliding a folder across the table. She hired a lawyer, Owen Fitzgerald. He's still practicing downtown. Dad said she died of a heart attack. Sudden, unexpected. That's what the death certificate says. But your mother's lawyer was suspicious. The timing was too convenient. 2 weeks before the first divorce hearing. She opened another folder. Kathleen had documented everything. Every affair, every gambling loss, every time he raised his hand to her. She was going to take you and Declan and disappear. The life insurance was supposed to be her fresh start money. But she died, and he got everything. He forged documents to get himself named as trustee. I tried to fight it, but I didn't have money for lawyers. I was a teacher living paycheck to paycheck. Dennis had friends in the right places. The judge was Carl Brennan's cousin. I thought about Carl in our living room, assessing my bedroom like property. The corruption went deeper than I'd thought. I've got more than she did, I said. I've got evidence, recordings, witnesses. Then let's bury him. Owen Fitzgerald's office smelled like old leather and stale coffee. He was in his late 50s, graying at the temples, with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much injustice. When his secretary showed me in, he stood immediately. "Moira Sullivan, I wondered if I'd ever hear from you." "You knew who I was?" "I've been keeping tabs, quietly, waiting to see if Dennis would finally slip up badly enough." He gestured to a chair. "Your aunt called ahead, said you have evidence." I spread it across his desk, the USB drive contents, the photos from the safe, Declan's recordings, the credit card fraud documentation, the offshore account statements, everything. He listened to one of Declan's recordings, Dennis laughing about how he'd solved the Kathleen problem with a little help from her own medicine cabinet. When it finished, Owen sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "This is enough," he finally said. "More than enough. We can build a civil case for the trust fund. The criminal stuff, the IRS will want to see this. The police, too, for the identity theft. And the DA might reopen your mother's case." Might? The supplement was legally prescribed. Even if Dennis gave it to her, proving he did it knowing it would kill her, that's hard without a witness or a confession. What you have is circumstantial. Damning, but circumstantial. So he gets away with murdering my mother. He doesn't get away with anything else. Trust me, that will have to be enough. It wasn't enough, would never be enough. But it was something. "There's more," he said. "My business, Sullivan Financial Recovery. I've been building it for 2 years. I have 3 clients lined up, contracts signed, $15,000 in advance payments. I'm not just his victim anymore. I'm someone who can help other people escape this kind of abuse." Owen smiled. "Then let's make sure you're around to do that." Over the next 2 months, I assembled a team. Owen Fitzgerald filed the trust fund lawsuit quietly, building the case brick by brick. Elena Rodriguez, a forensic accountant who specialized in family fraud, agreed to work on contingency. Within a week, she'd traced Dennis's money through 6 shell companies to the Cayman Islands. Total hidden assets, $400,000. Bridget became my rock. She moved into a long-term hotel suite and showed up every day with food, encouragement, and stories about my mother that Dennis had tried to erase. Harper gave me more than just a couch. She gave me a routine, a purpose, someone who believed in me even when I couldn't believe in myself. Declan kept recording, kept documenting, lived with Bridget, and went to AA meetings, not for alcohol, but because he needed to admit he was addicted to our father's approval, to the toxic pattern we'd all been trapped in. And slowly, carefully, I started working. I met with my 3 pre-sold clients for Sullivan Financial Recovery, helped a restaurant owner track down $30,000 her partner had embezzled, helped a nonprofit director discover board members were skimming donations, helped a small business owner prove his accountant had been hiding assets. I charged fair rates, did good work, built a reputation. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Month 3 brought the first real blow to Dennis. His bank accounts were frozen. I wasn't there to see it, but Rosemary texted me. "Your father just had his card declined at Costco, threw a fit. Security escorted him out. The IRS had begun their audit. 5 years initially, with the right to go back further if they found fraud, which they would, because I'd made sure of it. Every cash job he'd done while collecting disability, documented. Every dollar he'd hidden, exposed. Every lie on every tax form, highlighted with helpful sticky notes explaining the discrepancies. Elena had done beautiful work. Then came the certified letter. Declan signed for it, thinking it was something he'd ordered online. When Dennis opened the audit notice, Rosemary said he turned a color she'd never seen on human skin before, somewhere between purple and gray, like a bruised storm cloud. The police became interested, too. $15,000 across 6 credit cards made Patty's identity theft a felony. When Detective Sarah Mendoza called me in for a statement, I brought printouts of everything, every application, every statement, every purchase that funded Patty's essential oils pyramid scheme. "This is textbook identity theft," Detective Mendoza said. "We'll need to move carefully because she's going to claim your father pressured her, and he probably did. But she still committed the crime. They both did. We'll get them both." Social Security was perhaps the most satisfying. The Safe Driver app data showed Dennis driving every day, to golf, to Carl's dealership, to his under-the-table construction jobs. The videos Declan had recorded showed him lifting, moving, working without any sign of the debilitating back injury he'd claimed. Investigator James Torres was particularly thorough. 5 years of fraudulent payments comes to $230,000, plus penalties. "This is serious federal fraud, Miss Sullivan." "I know." "Are you prepared for what comes next? When people get cornered like this, they get dangerous." I thought about the hospital room, the slap, the blood in my mouth. "He's already dangerous," I said. "That's why I'm doing this." And month 4 brought Sienna. She called me drunk, crying, slurring her words. "He's got another one, younger than me, barely 18. I'm not even 23, and I'm already too old for him." I met her at a bar in the next town over where nobody would recognize us. Bought her Cosmos and listened to her ramble. "I documented everything," she finally said. "Thought I'd use it for blackmail eventually. You know, when he got bored of me. Didn't expect to get replaced this fast." "What kind of everything?" She pulled out her phone, showed me videos of Dennis counting cash from his under-the-table construction work, photos of him with his disability lawyer, coaching him on how to act more injured, screenshots of dating profiles where he claimed to be a successful businessman with no kids. The best one, a video of Dennis coaching his new girlfriend, Ashley, barely 18, clearly terrified, on how to apply for credit cards in her mother's name. "Can I have these?" I asked. "What do I get?" "Front row seat when he goes down." She smiled, bitter and beautiful. "Deal." But it was Declan's final revelation that broke something open in me. We were sitting in Bridget's hotel room, me, Declan, Bridget, and Owen, going through the timeline of our mother's death one more time. "The supplement was prescribed on April 5th, Owen was saying. "Your mother died on April 17th. The divorce hearing was scheduled for May 1st. 12 days, I said. She had it in her system for 12 days. "Actually," Declan said quietly, "she only took it for about a week, maybe less." We all turned to look at him. I was 11. I didn't understand what I was hearing, but I was at the top of the stairs one night, maybe a week before she died, and I heard Dad on the phone with someone. Dr. Philip something, the doctor who prescribed the supplement. "Dr. Philip Hammond," Bridget said. "He died 8 years ago." Dad was laughing, said something like, "This should help with her stress." And the doctor said, "She's been so anxious about the divorce. This will calm her heart right down." Declan's voice shook. "They were joking about it, about killing her." "But you can't be certain," Owen started. "I heard Dad say, 'I put it in her smoothie this morning. She didn't even notice.' And the doctor said, 'Give it a week or two. Arrhythmia looks natural, especially in someone with her family history.'" Bridget made a sound like she'd been punched. "Kathleen's mother died of a heart attack at 42. "Exactly," Declan said. "They planned it, used her family history as cover, made it look natural." "Can you testify to this?" Owen asked. "I was 11. It's hearsay. It's a 15-year-old memory. Any half-decent lawyer would tear it apart. But it's the truth." "Truth doesn't always matter in court." Owen ran his hand through his hair. "What we have is circumstantial evidence of murder. The warning letter, the suspicious prescription, the timing, Dennis's motive and opportunity. And now, a witness statement from a child who overheard something that might have been a confession." "The DA won't pursue murder charges," I said. It wasn't a question. "No, but they will label it a suspicious death. They'll investigate, and it will be part of the narrative when Dennis goes to trial for everything else." I looked at Declan. My little brother, who'd carried this terrible knowledge for 15 years, who'd been 11 years old and heard our father plot our mother's murder and hadn't understood until it was too late. You tried to tell me once, I said suddenly, remembering. A year after she died. You said something about Dad and medicine and Mom's smoothie. I told you to stop making up stories. I was 12. I didn't know how to explain it. And then Dad found out I'd said something and he... Declan touched his old scars, the ones I'd always thought came from bike accidents and rough housing. He made sure I understood that some stories don't get told. Bridget was crying silently. Owen had his head in his hands. We can't prove murder, I said, but we can prove everything else, and we can make sure everyone knows what he probably did. The court of public opinion, Owen said. It's not justice, but it's something. It'll have to be enough. And month 5. The walls closed in. The IRS froze everything. Bank accounts, assets. The house itself was tagged for potential seizure. Dennis tried to borrow money from Carl, but Carl had his own problems. His dealership was being audited too. His wife had filed for divorce, and he was looking at his own fraud charges for helping Dennis hide assets. Patty was arrested on a Tuesday morning during one of her essential oils parties. 12 suburban moms watched as Detective Mendoza read her rights. She did her nervous laugh the entire time, even as they put her in the patrol car. She couldn't make bail. The accounts were frozen, and Dennis had no cash. Her public defender reached out to me about a plea deal. She's willing to testify against Dennis, the lawyer said. Full cooperation, in exchange for 18 months and restitution. She stole $15,000 from me, and she'll pay it back, every penny. Garnished wages for as long as it takes. I should have said no. Should have pushed for more, but I was tired, and the recordings Patty had been secretly making, her own insurance policy against Dennis, were damning. She'd recorded him planning the credit fraud, recorded him coaching her on lies to tell if they got caught, recorded him admitting he'd forged documents to access my mother's trust fund. Deal, I said. But she pays back double, $30,000, for pain and suffering. The lawyer agreed. And Declan's loan sharks got paid off by an anonymous donor. Later, I found out it was Rosemary's son, the food truck owner Dennis had threatened. He'd saved $8,000, his entire emergency fund, and given it to Declan as a gift. Tell your sister thank you, he'd said, for finally stopping that bastard. The house was foreclosed on. Dennis had remortgaged it twice, forging my mother's signature both times. Without his illegal income, he couldn't make payments. The bank seized it. At the auction, Rosemary's son bought it for half its value, turned it into a community center for elderly immigrants, a place for them to gather, take English classes, get help with paperwork. He put a plaque by the front door, in memory of Kathleen Sullivan, a mother taken too soon. I cried when I saw it. Sullivan Financial Recovery was growing, slowly, realistically, but growing. I had 8 clients by month 6. Revenue was $30,000. Not millions, but enough to rent a small office, hire Harper part-time as operations manager, let her cut back her nursing shifts. I started a blog, anonymous at first. Surviving Family Financial Fraud. Posted my story in pieces, carefully crafted to help without identifying myself. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from people trapped in similar situations, stories that mirrored mine, families that destroyed from within. The ad revenue was modest, a few $100s a month, but it helped. Every dollar I earned felt like victory. And then, month 6, everything exploded at once. Dennis was served with the trust fund lawsuit at his golf club, in front of all his buddies. The public humiliation was immediate and complete. The lawsuit sought $2.1 million, the original amount plus 15 years of interest and damages. The criminal charges came next: federal wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, The state added elder abuse charges when they discovered he'd been stealing from my grandmother before she died, convincing her to sign over her Social Security checks while she had dementia. The trial was set for 3 months out. I spent those 3 months building my case, building my business, and building myself back into someone I could recognize in the mirror. The girl who got slapped in a hospital room was gone. The woman who remained knew exactly who she was, and she was ready to watch her father burn. "18 months after that hospital slap, I sat in the gallery of Federal Courtroom 4B and watched my father shuffle in wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed with his complexion. He'd aged a decade in those months, hair gone gray, face hollowed out. The linebacker build gone soft from county jail food and no golf. Judge Victoria Hayes, mid-60s, steel gray hair, reputation for zero tolerance, presided. ADA James Cooper laid out the prosecution's case with the precision of a surgeon. The evidence was damning. The USB drive contents, authenticated by experts. Declan's recordings, 18 months worth. Sienna's videos. Carl Brennan's testimony. He'd flipped to save himself, gave up everything about their tax schemes. Patty's plea deal testimony, nervous laugh absent, replaced by flat monotone as she described exactly how Dennis had coached her through identity theft. Elena Rodriguez's forensic accounting showed the money trail. $400,000 in offshore accounts. 15 years of under-the-table income. Forged signatures on mortgage documents. The systematic looting of my mother's trust fund. Dr. Sarah Mitchell testified about the warning letter she'd sent my mother, about the suspicious supplement prescription that came days later, about her 15 years of guilt for not pushing harder, not investigating deeper. Dennis's lawyer tried to paint him as a grieving widower who'd made mistakes, but ADA Cooper had receipts. Vegas trips the day after the funeral, the boat purchase while his kids took out student loans, girlfriend expenses while claiming poverty on disability forms. The hospital security footage played on a screen. Me in the bed, injured and vulnerable. Dennis slapping me so hard I fell. The courtroom went silent except for Patty's old nervous laugh echoing from the speakers. Judge Hayes's expression could have carved marble. Then came victim impact statements. Declan went first. My little brother, 27 now, 11 months sober, working 2 jobs and actually paying back his debts. He talked about manipulation and fear and the weight of carrying our father's secrets. He apologized to me directly, voice breaking. I chose the easy path while my sister fought alone. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of her forgiveness. Bridget spoke for our mother. Described the sister she'd lost, the future stolen, the grandchildren Kathleen would never meet. Her voice was steady until she got to the end. He didn't just kill my sister. He killed who her children could have been without his poison. Then it was my turn. I'd practiced this for weeks, in front of mirrors, with Harper, with Owen. I'd written and rewritten until the words felt right. Not too angry, not too broken, just true. Your Honor, I grew up without a mother because my father likely murdered her for insurance money. I worked 3 jobs in college while he spent my trust fund on boats and girlfriends. I went hungry so I could pay him rent in the house my mother half owned. I kept my eyes on Judge Hayes, not Dennis. He hit me while I was in a hospital bed recovering from an accident. He threw me out when I couldn't pay rent for my hospital room. He stole my identity, my credit, my future. Then I shifted. But he failed. He tried to bury me, not knowing I was a seed. My business, Sullivan Financial Recovery, now employs 8 people. We've helped 73 clients recover from financial fraud. We've recovered over $8 million. The Linda Kathleen Sullivan Foundation has helped 50 women escape situations like mine. I looked at him then, really looked at him. You taught me exactly what kind of person I never want to be. Every woman I help is a piece of justice you can never take away. You're going to prison. I'm going to keep growing. That's real victory. The courtroom erupted. Judge Hayes allowed it for exactly 3 seconds before gaveling for order. Dennis tried to speak. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder and shook his head. There was nothing left to say. Judge Hayes sentenced him to 12 years federal, 3 years state, concurrent. Total minimum, 12 years. No early release for 5. Mr. Sullivan, you exploited everyone who trusted you. You defrauded the government, abused your children, and likely murdered your wife. While I cannot convict you of that final crime due to insufficient evidence, I want the record to show that this court finds your wife's death deeply suspicious and your benefit from it morally reprehensible. She turned to me. Miss Sullivan, your resilience is remarkable. I hope you continue to help others. The court also orders Mr. Sullivan to pay full restitution for the trust fund, $2.1 million, though we both know he'll never pay it all. Consider it a moral victory. Six months later, I stood in my new house, modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy, and watched Rosemary plant yellow roses in my garden. Your mother would love these, she said. Harper was in the kitchen, making coffee, comfortable in my space like she'd always belonged there. Declan was coming for dinner. Sunday tradition now, slow rebuilding of trust through consistency and honesty. Bridget had moved 20 minutes away, beaten cancer against all odds, and become the family my mother would have wanted us to have. Sullivan Financial Recovery had 12 clients that month. Revenue hit $40,000. Not millions, not overnight success, but sustainable, meaningful growth. I'd hired 2 more people, both women escaping financial abuse, gave them careers and hope. The Linda Kathleen Sullivan Foundation gave its first major grants. 10 women, $50,000 total, emergency housing and legal aid, and a chance to start over. My book deal was modest, advance of $50,000, every penny going to the foundation. It wasn't about the money. It was about helping others see they could survive too. Dennis was in protective custody after being beaten by inmates who'd learned what he'd done. Alone, isolated, afraid every day. I felt nothing about it, which was its own kind of freedom. Patty was teaching yoga in prison, trying to find peace. I'd read one of her letters finally. Didn't forgive her, but acknowledged her humanity. Sometimes that was enough. Declan arrived with his girlfriend. Met in AA, both working on being better people. They brought flowers and wine and hoped that families could be rebuilt from broken pieces. We ate dinner, laughed, told stories about Mom that weren't about her death, but about her life. Bridget had hundreds of them, and slowly we were reclaiming her memory from Dennis's poison. Later I drove to the cemetery, brought yellow roses. Hey, Mom, thought you should know. He got 12 years. Not enough for murder, but enough for everything else. Declan's doing better. I'm doing better. We're okay. I sat on the grass, feeling the evening sun on my face. I started the foundation in your name. Helped 50 women so far. Every single one of them is a piece of justice. Every woman who escapes, who rebuilds, who thrives, that's your legacy, not his. The wind rustled through the trees. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely healed. I'm still in therapy, still have nightmares, still struggle with trust, but I'm surviving, growing, becoming someone you'd be proud of. I placed the roses on her grave. You tried to leave him, tried to save us. You didn't get the chance, but I'm finishing what you started. I'm protecting the people he'd hurt. I'm being the mother to strangers that you would have been to everyone. Standing up, I felt lighter somehow. Justice isn't always complete. Truth doesn't always win. But it matters that we keep trying, that we keep growing, that we choose love over hate, growth over revenge, community over blood. I walked back to my car where Harper was waiting. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I really am. And for the first time in 18 months, maybe the first time in 15 years, I meant it. The inheritance my father tried to steal wasn't money. It was my mother's strength, her kindness, her determination to protect her children even when she couldn't protect herself. He couldn't take that. And in the end, that was the only inheritance that mattered.